this mindset of forgiveness is not really just a mindset of forgiveness, it's a mindset of love. It's essentially you're loving life, you're letting life be life. You know, there is almost no chance in if you live to be to maturity, that you have not been insulted, that you have not had someone break your heart, that you have not had somebody double down and double deal you. I mean, if you can maintain an open heart, if you can maintain a steady gaze upon the world, if you cannot take things personally, it becomes one more thing that happens. And surely you want to learn from it, but in general, the mind that is steady, the heart that is open, the one who is following the flow of life is not the one who has a lot to forgive, because they didn't take it personally. They understood from the beginning, so this is the way it is. Forgiveness is, I'm going to do a smear here at the first. Forgiveness is, I think, a natural occurrence when the mind is in the right place. And sometimes it's a method of getting the mind in the right place, but essentially if the mind's in the right place, much of what happens in life just passes unnoticed. In a sense of it's not taken personally, it doesn't drive us to anger. We are not destined to repeat it over and over in our mind. Things happen and we move on. And I've been thinking about the way Jesus approached so many things, and he had such an interesting take, especially if you think about this culture he grew up in. He grew up in an honor-shame culture, which might also resemble, let's say, the mafia, essentially, which maintaining a sense of pride and honor was as important as anything. And that's why stoning was in the culture, why they would stone someone if they offended God, so to speak, or the social norms or sexual norms. They could be stoned for it because it was more important to maintain honor than it was to maintain almost anything else. It's the same true. You see it, you hear it in other countries now. India, sometimes you hear a stoning or killing of a woman who's been assaulted because it brings embarrassment to the family. So if you think about the world he lived in at that time, this exaggerated sense of honor and shame, to say, how many times should we forgive somebody? His disciple comes to him and says, how many times? And he says, 7, thinking he's being really good because the rabbis are kind of on the 3 times. And that's pushing it in that culture, because eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, or worse. This is honor-shame culture. And so Jesus says, no, not 7, 70 times 7. More than you can count. Just do it all the time. And this mindset of forgiveness is not really just a mindset of forgiveness, it's a mindset of love. It's essentially you're loving life, you're letting life be life. You know, there is almost no chance in if you live to be to maturity, that you have not been insulted, that you have not had someone break your heart, that you have not had somebody double down and double deal you. I mean, it's just happened. It's not like the end of the world either. If you can maintain an open heart, if you can maintain a steady gaze upon the world, if you cannot take things personally, it becomes one more thing that happens. And surely you want to learn from it. You want to know the one who will lie, cheat, and steal. You want to know the one who might say painful things to you in public and embarrass you. You might want to know that, and artful dodge might be obvious. But in general, the mind that is steady, the heart that is open, the one who is following the flow of life is not the one who has a lot to forgive, because they didn't take it personally. They understood from the beginning, so this is the way it is. You know, of course. Did you think it would be different? And if it was different than the way you thought, can you roll with it? And is there a sense of generosity to your spirit? Are you willing to give rather than only take? Are you willing to give goodness for evil? Are you willing to be kind in the face of arrogance? I think this is kind of like the life that Jesus was living, that somehow he made this shift that was radical for his day and age to be love made manifest, to be the one who would see into the situation more deeply and would say something like, "He who is without sin casts the first stone." I mean, talk about intellectual jujitsu. That was brilliant. But it came to him, I think, in part because he recognized we're all making mistakes. We always do. You've been a jerk. You've hurt broken other people's heart. You've disappointed them. You've double-crossed your friends. You've done a lot of things. You've done it. Okay. So I want to get to that part of forgiveness also, but let's just start with other people. Because I think sometimes working with other people is easier than working with yourself. I want to relate something that kind of defines this a little bit, but you'll have to stretch to include it in this talk, but let's go with it. I was up in Canada, and I was sailing this boat, which is big and powerful and over my pay grade by a good deal, and I needed something to happen. I can't remember what it was exactly, but I heard this inner voice say to me, "Oh, we can do that, but you'll make it a lot harder if you keep thinking about it." Isn't that kind of interesting? Instead of just saying, "I'd like this to happen," it said, "Don't think about it." Well, it's kind of the same thing with the rest of life, isn't it? It's a lot easier to live a smooth life if you don't ruminate over the things that you're worried about or that upset you. If you get in the habit of letting it go right away or very soon thereafter, the better, the easier, the more smooth, the more opening for grace to be in your life, in my opinion. And so this practice of being, not, "Oh my God," right? I do have a couple of jokes for you now that you're laughing. Most of them are questionable, and I know you would like those better if you really... So we'll start out soft and maybe work up. Man walks into a doctor's office, and he looks depressed, and the doctor says, "What's wrong?" He says, "I'm 35 years old. I have never had any luck with women. I'm just really depressed about that." And the doctor says, "Well, look, I'm going to give you some affirmations. You look in the mirror and tell yourself that you're beautiful, you're handsome, and every woman in the world wants to be with you. And you do that every day. You wake up one morning, you'll find that you're surrounded by women." A month and a half goes by. Comes back to the doctor. He looks kind of troubled, really. He says, "What's wrong?" He says, "Well, I did what you said. I looked in the mirror, and I said these affirmations. And after a while, I began to believe it, and all these beautiful, gorgeous women started surrounding me. They were just seemed like everywhere I went, somebody was around me." He says, "There's a problem?" He says, "No, I don't have a problem. My wife does." That's enough of a laugh for today. We'll go move on. I want to read you a couple of quotes. Martin Luther King: "We must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power of love." Fred Rogers: "Forgiveness is a strange thing. It sometimes is," I should do the Fred Rogers voice, "Forgiveness is a strange thing. it can sometimes be easier to forgive our enemies than our friends. It can be the hardest of all to forgive people we love. Isn't that true? So, now that you know it's hard to do, rather than, I think we often say the opposite. I should find it easy to forgive somebody. But when we're connected to somebody and we care what they think or how they speak to us, because we feel as though they hold some of our self-image in the palm of their hand because we're close. And they muff that. They make a mistake. Then it becomes much harder for us to really let it go, because instead of it not being personal, it feels like it's personal because they are close to us and they know us and they did this. But if you want to expand love and bring it back, then it's incumbent upon us and requisite that we forgive. Not that we say it was okay, because what's not okay is not okay. It really isn't. But the attitude within is what we live with. It's our response to it that is where we suffer. It happened, whatever it happened. It happened once, maybe more than once. But let's say the thing, for exaggeration, happened once. And we held on to it for days, no weeks, no years. Over and over we played it. Deeper and deeper the rut of pain and of anger keeps coming back because we have worn that into a groove in our psyche, and what fires together stays together, right? And so that becomes our experience in life, and it becomes the texture of our relationship, that unforgiveness. To unwind it is what forgiveness is about. It isn't about changing the past. It's about changing the present. It's about changing your experience. It's about liberating you. Classic line, the Buddha, or somebody smart said, unforgiveness is swallowing poison, hoping the other person will die. They don't. Well, maybe, but you die first. Another analogy, picking up hot coals to throw at your enemy. Who does it burn most? Our job isn't always easy to forgive. But setting the intention and being willing to try to understand or try to see it differently, setting the intention is sometimes all you can do, but it is such a powerful thing to set the intention, because just as the incident might have happened once you set your intention, you begin to develop a new line of thinking, a new way of firing your neurons. You begin to have a new experience, and it gradually builds and builds and builds until one day you can say, I forgive. And still you're not condoning, but you're also not stuck in the pain of what happened before. That we know. And that's where grace feels most obvious, when what was a problem becomes nothing. Just something in the past. That's forgiveness of others. I want to talk about forgiving yourself also. A long time ago, and we started doing a prayer here which is known as Ho'oponopono, which has a lot of O's in it. And here's the insight I'd like you to have, the O right now, which is that is really an odd choice of words, but as I've been thinking about it, I think it applies beautifully. The prayer is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. And it means, when you're doing this, this is the way I learned it. When you see something, a tragedy in the world, and you want to make a change through prayer, you say, I'm sorry. And what that says is not the typical I'm sorry, but it says, I see the very thought process that happened in that incident is seated in my own consciousness. And I know it's seated there because I can see it there. It is confessing that we're universally connected, but it's also saying that particular thing is also in me. I see it. Either that or very similar. That's why we say, I'm sorry. It means I see the problems in me. Please forgive me means please take this thought virus, this seed thought out of my mind. Please take it away. And to whom you're speaking, I do not know. Please forgive me. And then it says, thank you. And typically when I do this, I do it long enough till I feel a shift. And sometimes I don't, but when I do feel a shift, that's when I say, thank you, thank you. That means, thank you, that I don't have that thought virus in me because I feel a shift in me. Something has happened. And then you say, I love you, which is the foundational experience you want to have all the time. And what's keeping you from having it is this problem, this seed thought, this bad idea. And so if you can't say, I love you, you have whatever's keeping you from saying, I love you, to take back to the beginning to say, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Take this from me. Thank you, and I love you. And if you can't say, I love you, then back to the beginning. Keep up the good work until you can say, I love you in all directions, without qualifications. That's how Ho'oponopono works. And essentially, we're coming back to Jesus. So what was Jesus doing? He was going, I'm not seeing that as a problem. I don't have that seed thought in my head. Therefore, I can say, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. I'm not taking this as mine. I didn't do this. I'm not doing this. Right? I'm not condemning. I'm not worried about this. I'm moving. I'm in the flow. I stay with what's happening now. I don't get caught in the past. I'm sorry. I'm sorry is also, when I started to think about it, I went, no, that's just the perfect way of saying it. That I saw a problem in you. I'm sorry. I saw a problem in the existence of whatever it was. I'm sorry. This is my unforgiveness, my unwillingness to accept at the level of emotion, at least. Now, we still want to change. We don't need to suffer for no reason. Viktor Frankl said in his Man's Search for Meaning that if you can stop the suffering, stop the suffering. But if you can't, find meaning in it somehow. Change the way you perceive it. Look at it differently. Do not hold it as the worst thing that can happen. See what you can do to use that in a meaningful way to make it better. Parenthetically, I've been quite concerned about the earth, the world, as it is. We're cooking it, and we haven't stopped. We've hardly slowed down. Have you noticed? There's a lot of talk. We're still on it. And I think there are a few other things that are going wrong environmentally also, besides the temperature. And it has caused me to worry about this. I was talking to a friend last week. His job is to advise large corporations on how they can improve their footprint on the world. And I'm thinking, really? You must be confronted on a daily basis with the most terrible things that are happening to the planet. How do you maintain a good attitude? He says, well, it's all about possibilities. It's all about the possible, what's possible, right? And I started to think, well, I don't get it, because quite frankly, I don't see much as possible. Then I saw a show last night in which it was also on the same problem that I was just discussing, and they were saying, they had young kids going, we could be creating a magnificent future in a way that we have never done before. And I was shocked and pleased that some new thought came to my head, which was essentially, we don't really have to carry this trajectory out there, but we will if we don't see the world a different way, if we don't choose to build a world of our making, our decision of what is good, then what will happen is this default setting, which is that the pleasure principle will drive us to misery. So it is fundamental within the human mind's capacity, which is to form a vision of the future which is radically different than the trajectory we're on, and to move in that direction. It wasn't that long ago we didn't have the mechanical age. We weren't even in the mechanical age. Someone decided, hey, it would be really cool not to have to carry everything on our backs or on horses' backs. How about a train? Wouldn't that be cool? And we went in that direction, and we supported the idea. We could support a radically different idea, one of inclusion, where we see all of life as part of us, where we see all human beings as part of us, where we see the whole of this ecosystem, the complexity of it, can be supported by us rather than by us. That we are this is the Anthropocene era, right? The human era in geology. If we're that big and that strong, we can make radical changes if that becomes the vision of where we're going, rather than the vision that what we can only see is what has happened and how it's gone badly. Now, I know that seems like a digression, but think about it. Can you not see your life as a life without the need to forgive because you didn't choose to see anything as wrong against you? It was not against you. It was as it is, but it's not against you. It's a jump. It's not the way we were wired. It's not how we grew up as animals, but it's how we express our spiritual nature. It's not against you. The world is for you. Everything can be converted to something better. The losses can be transformed into wins when we gain what we needed to get from it, where we take everything as something that serves. I was recently served up some bad news, and I said, something good is going to come from this. I don't know what it is. Isn't that our job? To take what is not beautiful and make it so. To take what is unlovable and love it. To take what has hurt us and to go, oh, I see now, much more clearly. Isn't that where we're supposed to be going? And forgiveness is the way we release what we have decided in the past was wrong, was against us, was unlovable, was hateful, however we frame it, and say, I am going to make meaning out of this. I'm going to transform this into something else. And the first thing I'm going to do on my path to doing that is let it go. But I'm not stopping there. I'm going to take the new mind that it takes, that gives me the freedom to be able to do that. I'm going to take that new mind and begin to spread it around and look at the world from there. And I'm going to make my world sing, because I come to it with a heart that is open and I am willing to forgive in the moment and to move on. I'm going to see a world where I learn from everything that hurts me. I'm going to make note of that, not so that I can get back at them, not so that I can hold a grudge, but so that I can be wise. I'm going to lose my tendency to think anything is against me and decide that all things are working together for good because I do love. And I'm going to love more than I'm going to be afraid. I'm going to be honest more than I'm going to be deceitful. I'm going to be kind more than I am going to be angry or cruel. And every time that jerk drives down the road and cuts me off, I'm just going to say, good luck. I had a friend who used to drive in a very congested little town on his way to work. And he used to play the game, how can I get traffic to go more smoothly? It's a different and beautiful way of thinking of how to get from place to place. Rather than, can I get there the quickest? Can I make traffic work? Let's consider that as the baseline of our spiritual identity. How can I make this work? Rather than, how can I see what's wrong? We are incredibly creative beings, and the forces will be with us if we don't think and worry too much, but look for solutions. Release, forgive. Walk toward the future with hope. And know that the Christ that is in you and as you has never fallen asleep and is willing to give you the wisdom you need to step forward as a spiritual being, not just as a reactive animal. Let's let it be so. Let us pray. So as we begin to move into prayer mode, let's take a deep breath. This world can be quite challenging, and many of us have borne quite a few scars. And the world has turned, and some things that we could count on, we no longer can. And some of our innocence is gone. And if we're not careful with our thoughts, if we have no intention with our thoughts, we may fall into the rhythm of blaming and sorrow and anger. So let us set the new intention. To be Christ made manifest. To be wise. To not take things personally. To forgive what has happened so that we might live free. To look upon others as ourselves. And to give love to them. And to give love to ourselves. Let us be fearless. Because we are willing to temporarily feel pain or loss or suffering and not strike back and not lose hope and not lose love. And so it is. Amen.
I hope you got something out of today's service. We intend to bring you things that will help you in your life become more of who you want to be, give you the freedom of forgiveness and the hope of expectancy that your life will unfold in a way that brings you joy, happiness, and is a contribution to the world. If you would like to contribute to this ministry, please go to unitytriangle.org, hit the donate button, and it will lead you into an easy way of doing that. We thank you for your attention and look forward to seeing you again here.